Stop. Before you scroll past this, I need you to hear something. Not because of the thumbnail. Not because of the title. But because something, maybe something you can't explain, made you pause here today. And that pause? That wasn't an accident. There are moments in life when heaven doesn't wait for perfect conditions before sending a word. And this is one of those moments. I'm not going to ask you how you're doing, because I already know. You're carrying something today that you haven't fully explained to anyone. You wore a calm face this morning, but inside, something heavy has been sitting on your chest. There's a battle happening behind your eyes, between the part of you that still hopes, and the part of you that is genuinely exhausted from hoping. You have questions you stopped asking out loud because nobody seemed to have the right answer. You have prayers you stopped praying confidently because silence kept greeting you on the other side. And somewhere along the way, you started wondering, am I forgotten? Pause. Let that land. I'm here today, right now, to answer that question. Directly. Personally. With zero vague comfort. Here is the truth that heaven wants you to receive right now. You have not been forgotten. Not for a single second. Not on the day you cried and nobody noticed. Not on the night you whispered a prayer with a voice so broken you weren't even sure you finished the sentence. Not during the season that stretched so long you stopped counting days. None of it was silence from heaven. I want you to think back. Think about the prayers you prayed in private. The ones with no audience. No witnesses. Just you and God, in a moment too raw to share with anyone else. The prayer you prayed at 2 in the morning when the weight became too much. The prayer you prayed in your car before walking into something that terrified you. The prayer that wasn't even words, it was just tears. Just your name reaching upward because language had failed you. Music swell, soft but present. God says this to you today. I heard every single one. Not some. Not the strong ones. Not the articulate ones. Every single one. The trembling ones. The ones you repeated because you had no new words. The ones you apologized for because you thought you were asking too many times. Heaven does not count your repetitions to decide whether to listen. Heaven listens because you matter. Personally. Deeply. Without exception. Can I talk to someone specific for a moment? I'm talking to the person who stopped praying out loud because they were afraid bold prayer was no longer available to them. Because too many things hadn't worked out yet. Because disappointment had visited so many times that hope started to feel embarrassing. So you started praying small. Praying cautiously. Hedging your faith because you didn't want to be let down again. Maybe all you could say was, God, just help me make it through today. Maybe some nights, all you could say was His name. Maybe some nights even that felt hard. Pause. Here is what you need to understand. God does not measure the quality of your prayer by your confidence level when you prayed it. He measures it by the sincerity of your heart when it was lifted. A trembling prayer, offered honestly, carries the same weight before heaven as a bold prayer spoken from a mountain top. Because God is not listening to performance. He is listening to the heart beneath the words. And He knows the difference. He knew when you paused mid-sentence because emotion caught your breath. He knew when you tried to sound strong but your voice cracked. He knew when you said, "I'm fine," in public and then whispered the truth alone. He received all of it. None of it dissolved into emptiness. Now let's talk about the silence. Because that's where a lot of us got confused. We were taught, or we assumed, that if heaven answered, we would feel it immediately. We would see a sign. Something would shift. Something would change in a way we could point to and say, "There. That's my answer." But some of you have been in a long quiet season. Days turn to weeks. Weeks to months. Maybe longer. And in that silence, a lie began to form. The lie said, "Nothing is happening." The lie said, "You prayed, and it didn't work." The lie said, "Maybe God heard other people's prayers. But not yours." Pause. I need you to dismantle that lie today. Because silence before heaven is not the same as absence. When God is quiet, it does not mean He is distant. It often means He is working in places you cannot yet see. Think about it this way. The foundation of a building is laid underground. You don't see it. You walk over it and it looks like nothing is happening. But beneath the surface, the most important work is already done. That is how God often moves. He was touching details you didn't know needed touching. He was closing doors that would have harmed you, doors you would have walked through confidently without knowing. He was shifting timing because the full answer arriving too early would have been incomplete. He was moving in hearts. Changing minds. Rearranging circumstances in rooms you've never entered. Where your name was being spoken by people you haven't met yet. Music, soft and hopeful. While you were standing still wondering why nothing was changing. Heaven was already in motion. You just couldn't see the floor being laid yet. Here is something that might surprise you. There are prayers you prayed years ago that you have completely forgotten about. Prayers from a different season of your life. When you were in a different kind of pain. A different kind of desperate. You prayed them. Time passed. Nothing visible happened. And eventually, you stopped waiting for that particular answer. You moved on. You buried that request somewhere deep. But heaven never buried it. Heaven held it. Pause. God says this to you today. I remember the exact prayer you forgot you prayed. He remembers the tone of your voice. He remembers the weight behind the words. He remembers what caused that particular cry, even if you yourself have to think hard to recall it now. Some of what God is doing in your life right now is the answer to a prayer from a season you thought was closed. Some of the doors that are about to open, you will recognize them. Not because you expected them now, but because somewhere deep inside, you will remember asking for exactly this. A long time ago. When you get there, don't call it luck. Don't call it coincidence. Call it what it is, a faithful God honoring a faithful prayer, in His perfect time. I want to speak very directly now to someone who is barely holding on. You didn't come to this video because everything is fine. You came because something in you is tired. Tired of waiting. Tired of believing and not seeing. Tired of watching others receive what you've been asking for. Tired of going through seasons that feel designed specifically to break you down. And part of you, a very honest part of you, is asking whether there's anything left worth praying for. Let silence breathe. I'm not going to give you a list of steps. I'm not going to give you a formula. I'm going to tell you one thing. Keep your face toward heaven, even right now, in this exact state you're in. Not because you feel like it. Not because you've figured everything out. Not because your faith is at full strength. But because the God who heard every broken prayer you've already prayed, is still listening. Right now. In this moment. With the same attention he had the very first time you called his name. You don't have to clean yourself up to come back to him. You don't have to pretend the pain is gone. You don't have to sound strong. Come exactly as you are, tired, confused, hopeful but afraid, and let heaven receive what your heart is carrying right now. Because here is what God wants you to know above everything else in this video. You have never been too broken to be heard. I want to close with something urgent. And I need you to receive this with seriousness. Some things around you are already shifting. Not because circumstances accidentally changed. Not because luck finally showed up. But because prayer has waited before heaven, and what reached God did not remain unanswered. Pay attention in the coming days. Answers often first appear in ways that seem small. A thought that arrives out of nowhere. A conversation that opens a door. A feeling in your spirit that old heaviness cannot continue forever. Don't ignore those moments. Don't reduce them to coincidence. They are often the first visible signs of something heaven set in motion long before you could see it. This is not the end of your story. This is not the permanent state of your life. This is a season. And seasons change. Your prayers were heard. Your tears were collected. Your name is known before heaven, not as a number, not as a case, but as a beloved child whose voice matters. Music, hopeful, swelling slowly. You are not forgotten. You were never forgotten. And what heaven has begun for you, it will finish. If this message reached the place where your heart has been carrying something quietly, leave a comment below that simply says, I heard this. You don't have to explain. You don't have to share your story publicly. Just let someone know, this word reached me today. And if you know someone who is in a silent season right now, who is wondering whether heaven is paying attention, send this to them. Because maybe God used you to reach them today. Final pause. You are not forgotten, my child. Not today. Not ever.